Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special event that In Defense of Animals is hosting. This is our Tule Elk Town Hall. My name is Lisa Levinson. I'm Campaigns Director for In Defense of Animals, and I'm just so thrilled to have everyone here today. I'd like to take a moment and mention some of the other IDA staffers who are here. We've got Bob Price, who's here with the development team, can
hello.
Wave hello.
How are you?
And then we also have Mary Easonsee, who's with us today. And as a guest, we've got Katie Nolan, who's joining in. And now it's my pleasure to pass this over to jackg Gescheidt, who is our Tule Elk consultant, who's going to lead us today in our town hall. Hey, Jack.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you. And hello, everyone. I'm actually, surprisingly emotional just because I saw someone named Diana Oppenheim here who passed the baton, or I guess I grabbed it and she went to live her life. But oh, my goodness. She started as for elk. So I feel like this is the IDA t-shirt, but she had one like this. And oh, my goodness, I just wish this were a real town hall and we could all hug each other and go around like this. How this whole thing began as loving these animals, which is why we're here. So more officially, I'm jackg Gescheidt, the Tule Elk consultant within Defense of Animals, and I've been working on this issue with them about 2 years, and for a year before that, when I first met Diana and a few others who've been here far longer than my just 3 years, I came in with my Tree Spirit project, which is nature advocacy, which includes wild animals, of course, and wild lands. Like Point Reyes National Seashore is supposed to be as a national park. So the overview today is I'm going to talk at you for hopefully no more than another 7 or 8 minutes and kind of cover the basics for those people who can't stay. I so appreciate all of you coming to this first ever virtual Tule Elk Town Hall. A couple hundred people or more have signed up. Hopefully half of those can actually attend. We're all so busy these days. So we so appreciate your coming and showing up midday on a Thursday, and all for the benefit of these magnificent Tule elk, a rare native California species that are in need of our help still at Point Reyes National Seashore. And then I'm going to show about 10 minutes of slides of pictures, including pictures of the elk. And for those of you, I wish again this was a non-virtual town hall so I could have people raise their hands and kind of interact with all of you, and I'm just not skilled enough to do it virtually. So I just want to stay here with you and do the best we can here. And then another 5-minute talk after the 10 minutes of pictures. And then in less than half an hour, I want to get to asking all of you questions. Excuse me, you're going to ask me questions and I'll try to provide answers, and maybe with the help of the other IDA folks here. And we have some experts tuning in too who know more than I do. I'm a good generalist and I care with all my heart about these beautiful animals. I first came to it thanks to another shout out to Skylar Thomas, the independent filmmaker, who did a 90-minute documentary called The Shame of Point Reyes. I saw that a little over 3 years ago. Diana was in the room, Chance Gatrano of the Resource Renewal Institute, and some other key players. I can't name everybody, but I will try to name a few as we go along here, because I am just one of many. I'm very much committed to this, but I wouldn't be here without all the people that came before and the hundreds of you that care. And maybe there's 100 watching today. I don't know. Bob or Lisa may give a count because it's fun, but it's because of you that this is possible. It takes all of us. It takes us activists. It takes you, the people, to care. It takes attorneys. And then demonstrations, actions, and then we get the media in, and I'll talk about that more, but all of that's essential. But here, I want to start with this. There's good news. When was the last time you heard good news coming out of a campaign for the environment or for animals? We're saturated with bad news, and it's incredibly depressing. So right now, we actually have a little bit of good news. And that gets to the kind of the big questions here. I could do this whole thing in just 10 minutes. You know, what happened? Is it for real? Why did it happen? Why the sudden change? When will it happen? And then, of course, everyone's favorite question, what about the ranchers? What about the ranchers? Aren't they not going to like this? And how is this going to happen? And what changed? So back to basics. What happened was on June 9th of this year, the National Park Service, for the first time in 45 years, officially announced, in part of the NEPA process, National Environmental Policy Act, for those people in the know who know that terminology. I've only recently learned it in the last few years myself, issued a NOPA, a notice of a proposed action. And that proposed action, they're proposing an action to remove, or I prefer the word dismantle, the 3-mile-long fence that creates the reserve inside Point Reyes National Seashore. There are 3 herds. The reserve is the largest herd by the Park Service's own count of, as of December, 262 elk are in that reserve. I have more good news before we go on in this. We're filled with good news today. The elk are doing okay right now. They're not starving. They're not dying of thirst right now. I was out there last weekend. There's still water in the cattle ponds. We had a wet winter and a cool spring with a lot of fog. So there's still water out there, which means there's a lot of forage, a lot of vegetation for the elk to eat. So many of you showed up, especially 2 summers ago, when we had the big heat wave, and the heat was on, literally and metaphorically speaking, and the elk were suffering, and we did actions to get them water. Because of our actions, the Park Service actually buckled, or if you prefer, responded by bringing in some water troughs. They didn't service them. We went at them again. I want to get into some of that when I do the slides. So that's what happened. Is it for real? The next question. And the answer is yes, folks. Politicians can say one thing out of one side of the mouth and then the other. We can all kind of shuffle around with our responses, but this is actually an official action by the National Park Service. And it's a long process, but it's maybe a year to 18 months. They first do the notice of proposed action. They will take public comments, and that will happen later this summer, is how they described it. And that's when we will next tap on you. So more good news. We're not asking you to do anything today. This is to bring you into the fold, as it were, if you're not already, or as they say, singing to the choir, to sing louder, so that you know this is actually a winning thing. Tell 3 friends and say, wow, I can't believe it. The Park Service actually responded to we the people and the activists and the media people who came and did stories and the social media posts. All of it works. And I choose to be optimistic. Like I say, there's so much to focus on that's negative. This is actually, I believe, going to happen. We will make it happen because we will further encourage the Park Service at the public comment period to flood them with an overwhelming yes. We point you on your pointy ranger hat and say, yes, this is a good thing. We the people, again, as with every survey about Point Reyes Seashore and the elk, overwhelmingly, we the people want you to remove the fence, dismantle the fence, and then we'll get to the ranchers. That's a whole nother topic. What about them? What's going to happen? The last, I'll deal with that later, actually, but the other one is, why did it happen? What changed? And I've spoken to a bunch of people. I'm old-fashioned enough to actually call people up on the telephone. I have a phone here with a cord. Remember these kids? Your grandpa has them. And I spoke to everybody when this hit, because we were all like flummoxed and like, is this for real? We did the natural reaction, which is, you work so hard in a campaign, you forget you can actually win it. And I bet there's some activists here who are either smiling or saying, well, I don't know, Jack, you're a little too bright and sunny for me right now. I don't believe it. Well, I totally understand that. But I spoke to enough insiders, and here's the behind the scenes talk. As someone told me, whose name I will not mention, but who used to be in the Obama administration, connected to Washington, and he said, Dianne Feinstein, Senator Dianne Feinstein of California, was always the key. Now, not the only key, but one of the keys. On the Senate Finance Committee, old and set in her ways, liberal Democrat, I suppose, but not on this issue. Pro-rancher, pro-big ag, pro-big meat, pro-big dairy, and just not going to buck it. And that's above the Congressman Jared Huffman's grade, in my humble opinion, politically speaking. I don't consider him as big in opposition, and I think he will come to our side when he sees this tide is now turning. So with her failing powers, she's no longer an obstacle. And the second element, public pressure and an embarrassment for the Park Service. That's from another insider. In fact, I think I can say Jim Cota, and thank him for his just years of guiding me and giving me inside information. He used to be a Park Service attorney, and he knows his stuff. And he is one of many people who have said, yeah, this is an embarrassment for the Park Service. The more the public makes noise and it makes headlines, the more they want it to all go away. So activism, again, I'm going to keep coming back to that note in this talk here. Activism really can work. It's working here. So I could go on, as you can hear, but I want to now switch over, show you some pictures, and I'll come back. And then that'll all take a total of maybe 20 minutes. I'll talk a little bit more. That'll be 25 or 30. That's only halfway through. And then I want to turn it over to all of you for questions in the chat and live, for those of you who'd like to talk live to the camera like this. So again, thank you for coming to the first ever virtual Tule Elk Town Hall. Thanks to In Defense of Animals for hosting today. And I'm excited to share these pictures with you. So pardon me turning away to share now. Share sound. Okay. And can someone give me a verbal cue that enter the way?
It worked, Jack. Great.
Okay. Yes, great. We're on. Okay. So I'm going to let you, the tech folks, which is Bob. Thank you. Hi, Diana. I see you. I'm so thrilled to see you, my dear. It's awesome. Okay. So here we are. Even the Tule Elk are gathered around us psychically. It's our love for them. This is spurring this whole movement. That is to be sure. And that's what they look like if you get to go out there and have the honor of being in their presence. I'll talk more about that when this is over. I start with pictures of the elk and end with them because for me, that's so much what it's about, as well as pollution of the seashore and grazing rights and all the conflicts. But these are just such beautiful animals. Diana was right. And this is where we're talking about. For those of you who may not know, the two big arrows are pointing to this, supposedly if you walk it all, it's a 90-mile stretch of coastline. Whoopsie, sorry, whoopsie. Don't hit your mouse wheel. And you can see San Francisco bottom right. This is 71,000 acres national park. And to see it better, I've made this nasty little map as an activist. The cows do not occupy all of this land, so it's misleading, not intentionally. But there are about 5,000 cows out there producing about 9 million gallons of cow manure and urine. Yum. So hence the nickname, one of our nasty activist nicknames, which isn't inaccurate, Point Reyes National Cesspool. Hello. Whoopsie. Okay, and this is a map drawn by the wonderful artist Rhonda, luluart.com, which shows in the pale yellow where the 3 herds of Tule elk at Point Reyes Seashore are. The biggest one is up at the top with the little badminton net. It looks so playful there, but it's 3 miles long. I'm going to show you photographs of that, of course. And that runs 3 miles from the Pacific Ocean to Tamales Bay, as the song goes. And there is a song, but I won't play it right now. Closer up, same thing there. And then you can see this is a roughly accurate representation of where the cattle are. Get this, cattle operations in the, what they would call a pastoral zone, which we call the, cow pie heaven, occupies a third of the entire seashore, 28,000 acres of a 71,000 acre park is given over to private cattle operations that have a cheap land deal and don't want to budge. That's just the basic fact. And they can talk about history all they want, but that was not the deal. And oh, by the way, if Susan Eyes is listening, yes, my dear, you're right. They were paid millions of dollars to leave years ago and just have reneged on the deal. Politics and the power of the purse keeps them there until now, when the people, right this wrong and free this park of the cattle industry. That is our own Flair, looking pretty grim because she's pissed off, as she should be, walking the actual 3-mile-long fence line. And this is who we're working for. This guy is actually on the wrong side of the fence. He's on the cattle side. He swam around. You can see his undercarriage there, as I'll call it. Muddy. Here's another picture of the same guy. Hello. Whoopsie. There, and you can see he's kind of dark underneath. That's actually mud, is our best guess, from walking around the fence about a mile away from where he's standing, going in the water, coming up around. You can see the Tule Elk Reserve sign, and he's trapped there. He's trying to get back in, because that's what wild animals in a national park are supposed to do. Roam wherever they want. There are no fences at Yosemite or Yellowstone, and you don't need to fence off elk, even in Marin County, anywhere. They should just be free to go where they want to go. That's where they'll be healthy and happy. That's what a park is for. One more view of the infamous fence. This is standing at the edge of it on the road, so you can look along it, and you can see the difference between what cows do with silage mowing and the trampling of these many heavy animals, no fault of their own, eating the grass down to nothing, especially when it's hot and dry in the summer. And on the right, what happens when it's evergreen, with far fewer elk, about 1 elk for every 9 cows on the other side of that fence, spread out over a large area, to be fair. I recently posted something like this on Instagram, and some rancher was like, well, that's nonsense. You know, the cows, that was silage mowing, that was mowing. That wasn't what the cows did. It's like, but that's all part of the cattle industry. So this is the net effect. This is a straight shot. Cows live on the left side, elk live on the right side. Which should be a national park? Which should be a national park? And here is this, the news. This is on the Park Service, National Park Service, I'll call the Park Service or NPS website. I even sent this to the CBS reporter who came out and did a story, and he's like, I read it, Jack, I don't see where the news is. Well, fair enough. It's not exactly screaming at you, but I've highlighted it, put a red arrow, and that's what it is. Here's the big news, folks, hidden by a bureaucracy. Based on the review of public comments, get that one, and internal scoping, whatever that means, right? NPS has identified a proposed action. That's a NOPA, Notice of Proposed Action, for the Tomahawk Point Area Plan. A proposed action would include removal of the Tule Elk fence, along with temporary water systems installed during the drought. So that's it, and that had to be called out, and we are going to make a big trumpeting about it to let people know, again, with public comment. So a whirlwind tour of the demonstrations of actions of the last, 3 years. So around the world of 3 years in, I don't know, let's see if we can do it in like 5 more minutes. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my control. There we are. Okay, so demonstrations. Yes, we have some. Thank you. This is in the nearby big town of San Rafael. A much bigger one. I know Diana was there. No, actually, Diana, I'll give her credit. There was a gate closed at the dairy. She just said, let's go. And like, okay, Diana, thank you for giving me the balls to do that. And let's go have our demonstration at the dairy as we had planned. You can see the signs from In Defense of Animals here. I'm dying for dairy. Those are dairy hutches behind. This was almost 300 people came out for this one. We the people. Another demonstration. Each one of those crosses represents, I forget now, it was like 10 or 20 dead elk. 478 elk died in 10 years from being trapped inside that reserve during drought. When the drought hits, the animals suffer if they're not free to roam to find water. And then, of course, perhaps most famously and most effectively, we talk a ton about strategy. Bringing water into thirsty elk, although it's in part a public relations stunt, as it has been vilified as, does get some elk some water, although on this water drop, filmed by Tony Sagal of Silver Reaction Media, another filmmaker who's helped, they did actually dump the water the very next day. They caught us after we did it and came in the next morning and took the water out, which becomes another headline. Whatever they do, we respond with another action because we are on the side of right, and it's just a matter of reaching the people with an effective idea and to raise awareness and draw the media. Another bigger demonstration, Bear Valley Visitor Center, just like it says in the slide there, Jack. And then, oh yeah, let's do some water testing and prove our daring, breathtaking accusations that 5,000 cows pooping on the land gets washed into the surface water, the streams, and out to the ocean and to the bay. Not a big stretch of the imagination to realize it would. So this is an independently contracted civil engineer, professional, wading into, that's Kehoe Lagoon, holding up water you can see is not clear, but more importantly, what did the test reveal? Which is, oh yeah, the second year of testing, and this was on the website of another organization involved, the Turtle Island Restoration Network. Rigorous new study finds significant water pollution from cattle ranching at Point Reyes National Seashore. What a surprise. We were shocked to find the science actually backed up cow manure contaminants from cow feces in the water. How could that be? And of course, how could it not be? Oh, and I'm sorry, just one last point on that issue. The National Park Service stopped water testing in 2013. Why? For the same reason that the ex-president didn't want to do COVID testing. You are afraid of what you will find in there, Luke. Do not go. Hello, controls. There we are. So we take that information and make another demonstration out of it. A hazardous waste walk. Everything designed to get media attention. A prisoner's march, symbolizing the elk are prisoners in the reserve. A fake sign. In fact, the actual one doesn't say the freedom of elk is strictly prohibited, despite it being true. Hi, Scott, I saw you on this call. Thanks there, buddy. He's the tall guy on the right, with the biggest antlers. Another demonstration in Crissy Field in San Francisco, the back of Ken Belay, an amazing guy who's doing so much. There's so many people I want to give chops to, but we can't do this right now and keep this moving. Okay, this was one of the big demonstrations that was so successful because, about 150 people showed up, and I think about 90 or 100 people ended up carrying out 3,500 pounds worth of water on foot in the hot sun on a rare hot day out there with no fog in, 80-degree heat to put water in this cattle pond 3 miles out of the parking lot. A bucket brigade was formed from the trail up there, and we appreciably raised the level of that little pond, gave them a little bit more water, but got more media attention, dual purpose, all demonstrations. And then they finally responded, the Park Service did, by being embarrassed by all the bad press. Back to the first point, why did this happen now? Why the notice of proposed action, the NOPA? Because it's shaming, it does work. So they brought in water tanks. Of course, they only brought in 3. We wanted them to bring in more to the northern pond. This tank, for instance, is nowhere near this pond, but we eventually got them to install tanks here too. We just got to keep banging away at them, banging away with the truth. And those are the nice 350-gallon troughs. For those who care, this is, don't know what that blue pen mark is. I think that's my screw up. Anyway, but then of course, once they install them, well, they've got to maintain them, which they didn't do. So a year later, we're back at it saying, you got to clean the algae out of there. That's not healthy. If you're going to make a zoo and bring in water for the zoo animals, thank you. You got to clean the troughs. And really, you got to take the fence down, which is where we are now. I'm just giving a quick history. And why all that stuff? For the media coverage. Headlines, local papers of the actions we took. This is how these actions get out to more people. I'm sorry about that blue line through there. That is a marker, and I don't even know how to do it, to undo it, I would say. That is new since I've started this show. ABC News, another demonstration we did earlier before we had the idea to dress up as prisoners to dramatize it further, like that. Another reporter, CBS's John Rabo. It's been interesting to watch him come out and cover us, mostly from the initially not knowing the issues, pro-rancher, and his party line has changed now. And he certainly gives much more balance and gives our side the fair airing it should, because we're speaking the truth, not just generalities about historic ranching, which is a meaningless term. Why is this not working? Sorry, I'm trying to get it to change. There we are. The Pacific Sun, I want to give a shout out to the Pacific Sun and its sister publication, the North Bay Bohemian. Peter Byrne, a reporter for them, not the only, but the most prominent, is just doing hard-hitting story after hard-hitting story, a couple thousand words, and just, I would say giving them hell, but really just giving them truth, and more ink and more space. So the Pacific Sun has just been awesome. North Bay Bohemian, giving coverage to this important story, which is beyond just Point Reyes. The Marin IJ, this article I show because sewage dumping, well, they don't mean cattle manure sewage, they mean human sewage. In addition to the cow poop, to add insult to injury and more poop, the ranches, of course, aren't well maintained. So there are actually leaks in the sewage system, which dumps human feces onto the land, into the ponds, gets into the surface water again, and poisons everything. They just shouldn't be, there shouldn't be private business operations, especially ones that pollute, but regardless, private business operations inside a national seashore. And then, by the way, another 3 minutes of this and then I'll come back to you. So thanks for your patience if you're just joining us. Just a few slides. This is jackg, the Tule Elk campaigner for In Defense of Animals. Suit, that means not the nice suit that Bob is wearing today, but a lawsuit, defends elk at the seashore. Let there be lawsuits, always a good thing for environmentalists. It makes headlines and can actually be effective at changing policy, even if not winning the suits, which are still 2 of them now. One on the left, brought by Harvard Animal Law and Policy Clinic. I'm one of the plaintiffs in that one. And then the law firm Lozo Drury with Advocates for the West has 3 more groups I want to call out for a second lawsuit, focused more, not so much directly on the elk as the Harvard suit and the elk welfare, but the pollution in the park. The Resource Renewal Institute, the Center for Biological Diversity is awesome. And of course, Western Watersheds Projects. There, Laura Cunningham, particularly with Eric Mulvar, have been working hard on this issue along with so many others for West. But Western Watersheds also put up money for some of the first water testing along with In Defense of Animals, and everyone's doing their part. Trying to move on here. Okay. Oh, sorry, guys. Just a warning for those people who don't need to see an elk carcass. I'm sorry, a dead elk body. Just close your eyes for 10 seconds and I'll tell you to open. So close your eyes now if you do not need to see a picture of a dead elk. These you really don't. And I don't take these lightly anymore because I've gotten to know these guys. This is a photograph by Matthew Palvarosa Klein, an amazing photographer who came to this early on and then decided to have a child and raise a family. So he's there and helping, but not as active as he was doing. But he went out and documented a lot of these bodies before anybody else was doing it so actively. And it became a picture used by Harvard Law, of course. Show the truth. And then another friend of mine said, sue the bastards. Okay, you can open your eyes again and we'll finish up here soon with pollution. Don't forget about that, even apart from the elk. Even if there were no elk out there, there shouldn't be pollution in a park by these poor victims. It's not the cow's fault, of course, but these guys weigh a lot, much more than elk, about 2 to 3 times as much. They eat more, drink more, poop more. And when you have 9 times the number of cows, I'll say that again, 9-to-1 ratio. For every elk out there, 500, 550, there are about 9 cows, about 5,000 in the park now, and have been there for years. They'll say they've been there forever, and we say, it doesn't matter. You're polluting a national park. You were paid millions, time to go. Thank you, Jim Cota, for this lovely picture. They also, of course, get into the streams and just poop into it directly in case washing off the land accumulated and then washed in by winter rains isn't bad enough. Jocelyn Knight made this happen, another activist and another professional photographer in our group. So because of the water testing, I think it was she, I hope I'm crediting the right person, Jocelyn, who contacted, if you can see in the bottom of that sign, Marin County Environmental Health Services. So this is a county sign. When notified about the outrageous numbers, put up a sign and said, water contact may cause illness. Bacteria levels exceed health standards. Guess what the Park Service did when they caught wind of this county action? They took it down. They took it down. They superseded the county. So what did we do? I know, let's make our own sign. And check out the language on this one. Water contact may cause illness. Why? Fecal bacteria levels from cows exceed health standards. Plain English. Their sign, the official sign of the county, our sign for the activists. And the numbers don't lie. This is from the first round of testing. There was another round of testing equally bad. 10 times the amount of E. coli in the water tested where it had contact with people in the park, recreational visitors. Enterococci bacteria, one of your favorites, I'm sure, folks, 30 times. And everyone's favorite, fecal coliform bacteria, 23 times. Fecal indicator bacteria, folks, shouldn't be in a park. And we made a big stink about it with our hazardous waste walk. And then back to task. Why are we all here ultimately? These guys. And see if you can hear this. So that's the bugling of the Tule elk, I hope you can hear. But there are also babies out there. And as a macho guy from New York, oh my God, they're so cute. They got little spots like deer. I'm trying to advance the next slide. This guy looks like a kangaroo. That is a baby Tule elk. Yeah, I can see Diana's looking and smiling again. They are just so beautiful, such magnificent animals. It is just such an honor, as I keep saying, and a pleasure to be out there with them. And this is what it looks like now. Again, good news, folks. There is grass and forage even right now. So these are young, little velvety antlers males. I think these are called spikes, or maybe not quite yet spikes first year, but young males growing their fuzzy antlers. Again, just gentle, present, like giant deer, but a little bit more majestic because of their size and their beautiful presence. And this is that same pond that looks so god-awful when we brought water out to it. That's how it looks just about now. It's a little bit lower than that now, but there's still good water out there and, you know, greenery to eat. And that's all we want. Wild animals, wild Tule elk at Point Reyes National Seashore, to be free to roam and eat and live and bless us with their existence and their presence and their presence when we come to visit them. So what's next is this thing coming down. So I'm going to end this in a moment, but I would just thank everybody again for your ongoing support and for coming today. You can donate to In Defense of Animals at that simple URL, idausa.org/donate. You can keep up with the elk story there. Please sign up for email from In Defense of Animals, and for that matter, from my Tree Spirit project, so that we can inform you of, let's see, that's the last slide. Yeah, here we come. So I should be back now. So we can inform you of when the public comment period begins. Again, for people just joining us, when the public comment period begins, that will be announced by the Park Service. In Defense of Animals, as well as all the other groups, I'm sure, will join us. We've been working behind the scenes ready for this so that we can, here's the goal, folks, here's the team effort to continue the good news and win more good news. Hi, Anushka. Which is flood the Park Service. As I say, pat them on their little hats and say, good work, you did it. You proposed taking down the fence. We support you in doing that. We the people. We want to get at least 10,000 signatures. Bob, the development director here at In Defense of Animals, says, oh my gosh, we should be able to get 20,000 comments, 20,000 public comments saying, yes, do this. Now that's apart from what's going to happen when the fence comes down. We'll get into that in a minute, but there will be a public comment period in the next few weeks, a month or so, later this summer. I'm repeating myself for people who joined us. And that's when we will leap into action and guide all of you and say, here, fill out this form made nice and easy with public comments. We'll give you some sample text. I'm sure you guys know the drill for other actions, but this is a winning campaign, in my opinion. So I'm playing cheerleader here for everybody here and to spread the word. My God, it actually is true. This guy, Jack, seems really passionate and intense about it. It's true. The Park Service changed their policy after 45 years and has officially begun a long, annoyingly long, year-plus process, but it's for real, to take the fence down. And then I guess I'll head off the first questions that are going to come next, which is, well, what about the ranchers? And what about conflicts between elk and cow? And what I would say is, the elk will then be relieved of the immediate danger, or over the months of time, they learn the fence is down and they can drift south and find forage in the next drought, which might come. It might come this summer or this fall, and we'll be there to help through that one while this longer process happens. But when the fence comes down, they'll be free to roam. And they'll create, who knows what's going to happen with them exactly. There are 3 herds, they might mingle, intermingle. We hope they do. That's good for their genetic health, as well as their just freedom to move about as they should in a national park. And then that will create 3 new problems, which we welcome, which is potential conflicts with ranchers. How will they respond? Will they behave themselves or be naughty in the night? But we're prepared to deal with that. Bring those problems on a year from now. We have time to prepare for that. The Park Service at the moment is allowed to cull, which is their sweet little biologist term for shooting animals to death in a national park, because they say there shouldn't be that many in that area. Well, If they have 71,000 acres all of Point Reyes Seashore, it's not a problem. There won't be an overpopulation problem for a decade. And if there is, we can move those elk to somewhere else. So I'm kind of heading off a lot of questions here just because I do. But it's a good problem to have, and we expect this to public comment period. We will notify you. We ask you to participate in that and spread the word, get 10,000 signatures, overwhelm the Park Service with positive reinforcement. Yes, do this thing. Ignore the few ranchers that say, no, we want our cheap land deal, and we will win. And more importantly, the elk will win. These beautiful, powerful, magnificent wild animals should be free in a national park and not be competing with private cattle operations that are just, I mean, if I was them, I'd want to stay too and get a good land deal, but it's just wrong. They're also a source of pollution in the park. The elk deserve to be free. Please come and visit. My gosh, please come and visit the elk now. It's a great time to see them. They're not suffering. There are lots of babies out there. Calves, as the biologists say. I like the word baby because I'm a big baby and a fan of the elk. So with that, of course, I've run long. I do want to open up to questions, and you can do that in the chat. Someone's going to be reading through them because I haven't been. And you can also raise your digital hand. And I guess Lisa, Diana, I definitely want to give you the first question. Lisa, do you want to manage this, or should I just, I mean, I can see Diana, but I can't see everyone else. I'm just seeing myself. Maybe, yeah, I guess I should say pin so people can see me. Lisa, do you have anything to say about, have I left anything out about how to proceed now?
Actually, it's good. You have shared the instructions very well. Thank you so much, Jack. And thanks for that absolutely incredible update about what's going on right at this moment with the Tule Elk. And everybody, I'm sure, is on the edge of their seats because of this incredible news. You can probably see everybody who has their hands up. And so I think it's great if you want to call on them. And then we will, if there's a lull in the hands, we'll also add some of the chat messages and let you know when there's definitely some chat questions too.
Okay, fabulous. So, and then if you can, folks, try to keep your questions brief so we can fit more in. You know the drill, even though I'm not good at keeping brief, as you can see. Diana, please, the floor is yours, my dear.
Thank you so much. I don't necessarily have a question. I just wanted to say thank you so much for carrying this on. I got chills watching this whole presentation, and I'm super emotional too because it's so important. I just am so endlessly so much gratitude for everybody. This is an issue near and dear to my heart. I founded 4elk.org alongside Spirulina and have met so many amazing activists along the way, including Lisa Levinson and Floor of In Defense of Animals, and so many others. I saw Jim Cota here, and I just, even though I'm not present physically and have really toned down all the work I was doing on this campaign, I just want to say it is a labor of love. All the highlights you shared, hours and hours, weeks and weeks, years and years of work went into that, and there's a lot of disappointment along the way. And so it's moments like this where we can look back and see what we've accomplished. And I got the email from the National Park Service that said they were proposing to take down the fence, and I was just completely floored. And I just wanted to say I support you, and I will continue to spread the word and do whatever I can. And thank you so much. I'll definitely be writing a comment and more.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you again. And I mean, it takes, as you can see and hear and feel, it takes a village. It takes a herd. Next, Priscilla Rich. Yes, unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so excited and thrilled at what you're doing. I'm the CEO of a climate solutions nonprofit here in Danville, and I've written like 4 comments, like why I'll just start with the fact you're showing a microcosm of how to take on our climate challenge globally. And it starts with the cows, but you're really trying to resurrect the environment that was intended originally when JFK created this park in the first place. The cows have to go. They don't belong there. And that's like a statement for everything else we have to address in other ecosystems, which is becoming so apparent. But you folks are doing an incredible job at it, and you're showing us how to deal with getting the attention of our fellow citizens. I mean, I love the banging away with the truth because you've done it so creatively. It's phenomenal. It's also, this is a whole thing about dairy is another statement. We don't need so many cows, because climate change is also about dealing with our ag problem. Cows are part of that. We don't need so much dairy. Human bodies shouldn't have so much dairy. I mean, this is like another factor in the conversation. I also have learned the indigenous were moved on sometime soon after, or maybe before the park was created. Well, the Tule Elk were part of their culture, and that's another part of the piece of what went wrong here and what has to get corrected. And personally, you know, I just sure hope when the elk come through that the ranchers don't start shooting them dead because they're invading their cow space. I'm really concerned about this. I mean, what is the National Park Service doing about removing the cows? I mean, my feeling is the cows need to go before the fence comes down. Let's remove the cows because they don't belong there. It's not very fair to the Tule to have the ranchers saying they still own claim that space, and then the elk come into it. I'm afraid of what's going to happen with that confrontation. That's my fear. That's my fear.
Thank you, Priscilla, for all that. I'd love to talk to you separately. Because I'm old, I'm over 35. I love talking to people on the telephone, as I was joking before, but it's true. So, I mean, you build community that way. You build longer lasting relationships. So I'd love to chat with you. I agree with everything you said. And it just reminds me to share this book. I'm a vegan because I saw Cowspiracy and couldn't run away from the truth anymore after 50 years of meat eating. My specific tactic is not to hammer people about it. I just say, tell you what, just read this book, which was turned on to me by Jim Coda the lawyer. Jim Coda the lawyer, that's his official title. This Land, How Cowboys, Capitalism, and Corruption Are Ruining the American West. Christopher Ketchum, investigative journalist. I'm trying to get it to, there we are. So this is an amazing book. Once you read this, I don't have to have the argument anymore. It's just cattle are a problem everywhere, and what's happening at Point Reyes is a microcosm. Wildlife Services, as you folks know, yeah, like I say, Priscilla, you and I should talk and brainstorm a little bit. I want to get on to a few more people before I pontificate some more. Robert Goldman is next. Would you unmute yourself, Robert? And
yeah,
come on down.
How's that? Does that work?
Great, can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, I'm always thinking whether it's wild horses or wolves or bison, where are the celebrities? Like, where is Clint Eastwood? He loves animals. Where is James Cameron? They both teamed up to fight meat eating. Where's Leonardo DiCaprio? These people all live in California. Where's Jane Fonda? She was with her husband, her former husband. She spoke up for animals. Why can't they come to your protests and really bring in the media? You're doing great with media coverage, but why isn't it sustained with the celebrities all over the place in California? Why aren't they an active, visible part of this right now?
Great question, Robert. Thank you. We have had, especially IDA, In Defense of Animals, has had success. We've gotten Peter Coyote to be involved. We got a comment. Gosh, I'm sorry, Lisa, remind me, was it on the Farallons issue or on this issue? Jane Goodall as well. I mean, IDA does a pretty good job as an organization of reaching out to celebs, and we absolutely, the answer is yes, and we're trying. And I just put out a request here to be very practical. I'm going to ask you a question, Lisa, and then not let you answer. How typical of Jack. And that is, if anybody here has a connection to national media outlets, we'd love to get to Harper's, the New York Times Magazine, the Atlantic, the New Yorker. And it just, I'm because we've been banging away at this, there's that expression, but the media is a separate game and it's a full-time job, and none of us are working full-time in any one aspect of it. We're all doing so much of the time, and for very little pay, which is why donations help. But we need more and more national media. And then I think the bigger celebrities come. I mean, this movement's going to grow now. I'm convinced, even the energy of it today, because it's good news and we're on the side of right. I mean, it's really clear. To take on cattle is this giant issue, but you can go at it through this one specific place, which demonstrates when you say, well, it's a national park, then people learn, oh, I thought cows were nice on the land. And they're green rolling hills out there, like I did until I saw the shame of Point Reyes driving through. So this is a way to educate people about the bigger issue. And we're up against Priscilla, the giant PR machine, the giant public relations machine that's now pushing the clean coal of the cattle industry, which is regenerative ranching. And for any regen ranch fans here, yes, it's better. I hear you, but it's not scalable and there's not enough land for it. You can't feed the nation's meat appetite, beef appetite, dairy appetite with regenerative. It just ain't so. The numbers just don't even come close to working. We'll talk. Next is Robert Roy Vander. I can't see the rest of your name. Please unmute and join us, sir. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for your good work, Jack. Hi, Lisa. Vanderhoek or Funderhoek is my last name. And I worked for the federal government as a wildlife biologist on the Carrizo Plain, the federal land and state land in San Luis Obispo County, where I was there when the elk were brought, Tule elk were brought from the Owens Valley to the Carrizo Plain. And they almost instantly implemented a hunting program there, the state of California, and the federal government, Bureau of Land Management, collapsed and said, go right ahead, you know, we're in support of the hunting program. Now that was in the 1990s, so 30 years ago. But I have researched this topic, and I know the state of California agency, the Department of Fish and Game Commission, and the department have been opposed to having the Tule elk on the endangered species list, because that would mean there would be no more hunting the Tule elk. So the governor is in charge of the Fish and Game Commission by his appointees and the department, the director of that. And I have a feeling there's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's politics that's weighing in secretly to the National Parks Service for certain actions, because they don't want to see, I mean, otherwise, if there wasn't this politics, I might even see the National Park Service asking its sister agency, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to put the Tule elk on the endangered species list. But we have governor, president, you know, cabinet secretaries of the state and federal government, all kind of like in politics, preventing us from getting the Tule elk onto the U.S. and the state endangered species list, which would make the National Park Service behave very differently.
Of course it would, Robert. And I extend an invitation to you. I'd love to talk to you as well. I just love talking to people because, you know, I'm crazy that way. I actually like people more than machines. So I have no place in the future, clearly. But the difference, of course, at Point Reyes is because it's a national park, no one's going to hunt in there anyway. So what you said is all right. And I've spoken with Julie Phillips, who's been incredible on this issue and working with the elk for 37 years. You may know her name. And we said, why, maybe we should start a campaign to list them as endangered. And Jim Cota, the lawyer, my favorite go-to, is also like, it's a 5-year process. It takes a lot of work. It's a great campaign. And instead we focused all our efforts on this, you know, one thing at a time. So that's the short answer. And I'm happy to talk to you more. Okay. Richard Landman, I want to get some more people in here. Thank you, Richard.
Hi, thanks, Jack. Great presentation and really inspirational. I'm a physician and an ecologist. I've published 2 papers on restoring elk to the San Francisco Peninsula and how to get elk across freeways. There's 2 more papers in review at California Fish and Wildlife. We have friends at CDFW and we have opponents, but I would argue that your work and the deal and the battle with the ranchers is ubiquitous in our state. All of the complaints about any of our efforts, and there's been no translocations of elk for 25 years, except to bolster existing herds, but no new herds established. The result is we have all these fragmented islands of elk, Tule elk, very few of them are connected. I hope that your organization will just be the beginning and will expand beyond the local mission at Point Reyes and start to embrace this mission of connecting our herds and helping them get into new areas. There's a vast amount of protected land in the Santa Cruz Mountain Range, from basically from the Pajaro River all the way to South San Francisco. Elk you could have literally hundreds of elk herds in it. And CDFW is slowly, some are there, some are not. We need more help. So thanks for what you're doing. It's teaching us a lot.
You're very welcome, Richard. And again, I appreciate the thanks, but there's so many people working on this issue. I am a beginner. I still am quite the beginner. I'm well aware of it. So many people have done so much work ahead of me, and some of them are showing up here, which is great. I want to contact me as well. And I would just remind me we should do a conference, a forum, just, 20 of us. And Julie Phillips, the biologist who knows all these places very well, and she was the one that's kind of my go-to, and saying, yeah, we can. One of the arguments against freeing the elk is that they'll spread too far. So you're the guy to talk to about how to make it safe for them to be on roads in Marin, even outside the park. They just, they're like big deer. They're not. I mean, it's a whole other thing about I know there's another question or a comment about there's no predators and wolves and bears and all that. And I'm a wildlife guy who would love that. I know that there's going to be a lot of public fear and opposition. It's a whole nother issue. But in the meantime, just in the immediate, there's plenty of room in that park for more elk, especially after the cows are pulled out and they just don't belong there. So that's why this issue is so great. It's so easy. We're clearly on the side of wrong for so many reasons, as opposed to just the politics of listing something as endangered or not, So let's talk more. And I want to, I've got 4 more people lined up here and I want to get some more voices in. So thank you, Richard. Anushka. Unmute yourself, Anushka. Unmute yourself, bottom left microphone usually.
Oh, thank you so much, Jack. I actually wasn't raising my hand. I don't know, maybe I was just happy and doing this kind of thing. But okay. Now that I'm on, I just want to say thank you so much to you. Thank you for everyone who's here, everyone who's been on those campaigns. It's a great community and I just can't wait for the future.
Okay. Thank you, Anushka. And I want to get to Jane and Molly Flanagan next. I see up here, there may be more, but that's all I can see at the moment. And we're supposed to close at 2. Maybe we'll run longer. And just so everybody knows, this is going to be recorded. This is recorded, and we will share it out so people can watch it there as well. I'm happy to stick around till, until the cows go home. Who is next? John Burkett? It looks like you're next in my queue, if that's okay. Can you unmute yourself? There you are. And unmute bottom left, I think. You're on.
Okay, I didn't really request a comment. I like the work that you're doing, and I've been following you on the True Spirit email.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Great. Oh, I just wanted to say, if you don't mind, I was with you on Coco Cay in 2015, and part of the pictures called Heart of Palms and Nature's Trails.
That means you were hugging trees naked with me in my naked tree hugging days. Fantastic.
Absolutely correct.
Yes, how I've fallen. Now I'm just hanging out with naked animals and photographing them, usually while clothed. Good to see you, sir. Sorry to pick on you. In fact, are there any more hands raised? Looks like not. Then I don't have full screen access here, so I'm not sure.
What's happening is those folks are part of the gallery view. They're part of our group. Okay. May not have had their hands raised. So we'll go ahead and go on to some of the questions that are.
Please. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Let's see here. So we do have some questions. And one of them was from someone who doesn't have access to the video. And she was asking if there are other parks that allow this sort of ranching going on simultaneously with the wildlife.
Good question. I have a partial answer. I'm not an expert, but it's like my hiccup. Jim Coda the lawyer. Jim Coda the lawyer. I think there's 18 other park units. I mean, he really has the specific answer. He can give you a 10-minute full answer. I think it's 18 other national park units in the national park system. The Seashore, our Seashore, is a park unit that allow cattle grazing. But this is the only national park unit in the entire system that has an active dairy or dairies inside it, meaning the business inside it, not just grazing rights. So that's the short answer. And why don't we go on to a few more? I realize we're running out of time, and there's I see 99 comments, which I've not been paying attention to because I can't multitask the way 20-year-olds do. So read on.
Okay, so if you do have a question and it was up earlier in the chat, you may want to put it a little lower so we can get to them. Let's see.
Actually, that's a great suggestion, Lisa. If you type it in now I'm looking at the chat and I can just, instead of sticking poor Lisa in the middle who's willing to read them, I can read them myself and respond quickly. Spencer Smith, can we adopt models from other national parks or have other park rangers audited Point Reyes? That's a reasonable question. I don't have an answer for you because this is such an outlier. This is the only park with dairy operations inside it. So it's more like we'll follow the other examples rather than go to them for help. I'm sorry, I can't give you a better answer. That's the best one I can do. Any plan to get rid of the squatter ranches, says Jane Eagle to everyone. Well, that is the next big question, of course. And yes, we have plans to, as I would put it in my strategic activist mode, educate the public. All we need to do is educate the public. As John Spear, another activist in this group for years, has said, as has Tony Sagal, the filmmaker activist, both say daylight is the best disinfectant. So for anybody who says, oh, but they're historic ranches, and they contribute to the community financially, we say, well, actually, they don't much. Most of their product goes outside the community. They're already heavily subsidized by the public. The public doesn't know that, and they're polluting the park. End of argument. Done. But people don't know that because they're getting the public relations stuff. And of course, well-meaning people who don't know any better and who repeat something they hear that's not true. All too often that happens as well. How was the NPS allowed to permit more ranching operations and to extend the leases of those existing ones? Well, that's a great question. How would I answer that briefly? I don't know. I guess I'd say, I'm a good summarizer here. Some can give you a more intelligent answer, but I'll say politics, public relations, and money. How's that? Kind of the usual, right? I mean, any activist here is going to go, well, of course, what he said is true. And then you can get into the specifics, but we have to turn, it's everything. Here's my activist perspective. You have to do everything all at once, everything everywhere all at once, as the movie and the kids say now. So it's activism, media relations, educating the public, lawsuits, and relentless persistence. Those 5 things, and then you win. And even winning takes years. Read Senator Al Franken's book, Giant of the Senate. There's an entire chapter on just passing a bill, or which is to say, spend 3 years trying to pass a bill. So it's a long battle, but it's just getting the word out, educating people, the narrative changes, people get educated, and then everything can shift. Are they still culling elk at Point Reyes? Great question. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Kate Lesenby. So they have said that they would cull the 2 free-ranging herds, which is to say, not the Tule Elk herd behind the fence. As I like to say cynically and darkly, those elk they don't need to cull because they're dying from being fenced onto drought-stricken land. The Drake's Beach herd, when the number exceeds 140 elk, they can cull. It's now 151, I believe, 11 elk over. It might be a little bit more than that since the last count. But they have, and then the Limmentor herd, they didn't count this year. They didn't do a count. So there's no official count and, oh, we have to cull because there's too many. But they have said semi-officially, in their weird quasi-official way, they have no plans to do so at this time. And the wise guy in me, because God knows I'm a wise guy as well, it's like, you go ahead and try to do something about that. We'll be out there so fast. Just dare you to do that. And we will film it at night with infrared. You'll try to keep us out, and we'll make a whole tussle around the fact that you're shooting elk in a national park. But having said that, that may all be moot. I would like it to be moot a year from now when the fence comes down, then they're all free ranging. And there's no, it's like a Dr. Seuss story. Well, which of the snitches with stars and which of the snitches without stars? Well, if they all get mixed up, then can't we all just get along and let wild animals run in the park? And then, of course, we activists and we organizations like IDA will be working to right the wrong and change the policy so there's no culling of elk in a national park. You don't cull animals in a national park. That's absurd. And I know that, having said that, I know there's a bison cull that just went on and Native Americans participated in it, and it's a whole complex issue. But that's my stance as an activist, as a purist. You don't shoot animals in a national park. First, remove all the cattle from the country on public land at half market or third market or 10th market rates, and then talk to me about too many animals. Killing mountain lions is for cattle. Killing coyotes is for cattle. Killing wolves, my God, these gorgeous creatures, is for cattle. Horses, wild horses round up for cattle. Did I leave one out? Okay, next question. Jack off his high horse again. No, actually, Woody Elliott, I think 170 were counted by NPS in the Drake speech herd at the end of 22. Oh, you know what? Who might I tell Woody Elliott is wrong? Woody Elliott's amazing and a knowledgeable biologist. So if he says it's 170 and it's supposed to be 140, then there are 30 over. Thank you, Woody, for the correction. So there's 30, too many elk in an area, because they're in an area and they should have free range and not be near the ranches. And prairie dogs, thank you, Kate. Yeah, I mean, wildlife services, if you don't know what that is, you don't want to know. It's killing animals for the ranchers. The meat and dairy lobby is way too powerful. Yes. Currently, okay, good comment here. Tule Elk numbers, by the way, overall are 1% of their pre-colonial numbers, meaning there used to be about 500,000 elk ranging throughout. Gosh, I don't know, someone else, Diana would remember if it's beyond even California, but certainly, yeah, I think into Southern Oregon as well. The Tule elk, there are 2 other subspecies of elk as well, Roosevelt and Rocky Mountain. But there were, let's just say a ship ton more elk than there were. So to say that they were nearly extinct, and ironically, the Park Service is the one that really helped bring them up here. Woody knows about that much more than I do, was around for it, brought them into National Park, a great place, and they've done very well, but for the fencing. And it's time for cows to go, to make more room for them. Is there any way to shift the message that doesn't imply cows are at fault? As humans, we need to bear the burden for the. So, Molly, good question. Hi, Molly, I can actually see you and hear. This is almost like being in the same room. You're talking tactics now. I have that part of me too. The angry activist is like, the darn cows and the darn cattle ranching and the darn industry. And I totally get that anger. I really do. And, if someone feels that, they feel it. I'm not going to talk them out of their anger. I would argue strategically, you can often, not always, because there's a place for anger and defiance and, trespassing, as we did to bring in water. Well, technically we didn't trespass because it's a public park, but you're talking tactics, to soften your message and reach out to people and educate them and not demonize ranchers. I think that's good. That's my stance. But you're talking personal taste here, and I don't expect a consensus. You want to make a comment, please?
Sorry, can I clarify? I'm not actually, I would suggest that we do put the emphasis on ranchers and on ranching and on the human systems of violence, as opposed to the cows, which can happen sometimes, even though we know they're not at fault.
Thank you for the correction. Yes, and it's tricky. In fact, your comment will be very appreciated by another wonderful woman at In Defense of Animals, Anita, who's constantly sort of watching my language and saying, don't say cows. I'm like, I can't each time say, we want to remove the cattle industry. The cattle industry is creating all this manure. Well, that's technically true. It's difficult to make your messaging.
We always address the cows as victims in our messaging.
Yeah, and IDA, as you heard, the disembodied voice of Bob, our development director, who's awesome, they're constantly training me and reminding me, this is my first kind of animal rights issue where don't blame the cows, and make sure people understand that, because it's easy to get misled. So I totally agree. And
they are victims among the Tule Elk in this. Right. And we've always been very clear about that. We do not want to vilify the cows. We're opposed to the sweetheart lease deals that are perpetuated year over year at taxpayer expense and at the expense of the cows and the Tule Elk. So yes, we're with you on that.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else from IDA want to please share the spotlight or take it?
I'll jump in and say, just because I don't want to be here too long, but a common question that gets asked is, what can you do? What can you do? And Jack was very good about laying out sort of the next steps that are coming. And we have an alert and an advocacy system that we have put together that we work very hard to make sure that everybody that signs an alert, it is actually delivered to a human being, a person with a pulse. Now, whether they listen or not or take any action, that is up to them. But our petitions, I just want to stress that they're very real, and we go to a lot of trouble to make sure that they are delivered.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bob. Awesome. Yeah, so, and you'll get a petition from In Defense of Animals if you're on the email list. So you can, again, sign up at idausa.org and get email from them. You can get email from me as well. We're often, coming in from two different angles for the same points. The next big one is going to be the public comment period when that opens. Again, to repeat, in case someone's just joining in now, we're waiting for the public comment period from Park Service to open, and we will descend on them like a plague of loving insects.
Can I ask Bob a question?
Sure.
Go for it.
Yeah, Bob, I'm curious, from the legal point of view, what do you think it will take getting the dairy ranching off the land?
Massive amounts of pressure and a huge awareness campaign. If I had my way, we'd have a billboard every 50 feet on the drive to Point Reyes that discloses every rancher's financial information and their terms of their lease agreement, and make clear that they're living there on taxpayer money. And that costs money, like that's just sort of like my take on one tactic, but it's going to take lots and lots of people to be aware, and they have to know, and we have to let them know, and then we have to help provide them a voice. And so jackg is doing a great job of letting people know. He has done a fabulous job of building awareness, and we've got the track laid to let people have their voice heard, and we want to enable people's activism on this.
But why can't a lawsuit have the right? Why can't a lawsuit address that there's been a wrong that needs to be corrected?
I'm not a lawyer, and lawsuits are complicated, and there's issues of standing and cost, and so you're right. Yeah, sue the bastards, I guess, is one tactic, but we're also trying to pursue things on the legislative front. We want Congress to pass laws. We want our parks to uphold their end of the bargain and do the things that they're supposed to do. We're promoting advocacy. So I can't name like one thing. I just think it's going to be this plurality of approaches that constantly, wedges its way in. I mean, try everything, find out what hurts, and then push there more.
Okay, so jackg, could you talk more? There is a lawsuit that has to do with the water quality, right?
There are two lawsuits. Harvard is focused on the horrible conditions for the Tule Elk at ALL of Point inside the fence. In fact, that was one like, hey, is this just a tactic? If they're going to say they're going to take the fence down, they can tell the judge. We've appealed the case, which comes up in likely September, the Harvard case, focused on the welfare of the elk. Second suit brought by Resource Renewal Institute, Center for Biological Diversity, Western Watersheds Project, and that's focused, someone could speak in more detail, but just briefly for this, that's the environmental problems that the cows are causing in the park, the cattle operations, excuse me. I stand corrected, the cattle operations. So Chance Catrano is a great guy working on this issue, and I kind of go to him and say, what's the latest, or what are you allowed to share? What will the lawyers let you speak of? Those two are both in process, and they have not been lost. As Bob was saying, I'm also not a lawyer, and therefore not qualified to say what I'm going to say, which is they're very long and confusing and expensive, but they also raise awareness even when they don't.
But it sounds like that the lawsuit focused on the water pollution has the greater chance of removing the dairy ranching.
I would agree with that assessment. Yes, Your Honor. But any lawyer watching this is just like, yeah, go ahead, you're talking, but
Yeah. And where does that one stand? What's happening with that one?
I don't know details. Last I heard was from Chance a month ago, negotiations are underway. It got complicated and delayed because of so-and-so, so-and-so. And I don't know how this latest announcement affects anything, if it does. The other thing I do want to talk about is, well, briefly, is just, again, one step at a time. Public comments, tons of media. I'd love if there's someone in this group is connected to, has a friend who actually contributes to the New Yorker and can get to the editor. I mean, it's a great story. This story touches on everything. As Priscilla, it's in microcosm, the problem of cattle ranching, which is a climate issue. We cannot possibly mitigate the climate crisis without addressing not agriculture, right? That word drives me crazy. Susan Ives turned me on to Bob Fenton, this incredible book, reminding me of what I kind of already know, which is messaging is so important. It's too many cows raised for beef and dairy, raised for milk and for meat. And without addressing that and getting people to know that today, the number one thing you can do to lower your carbon footprint, it's simple, it's easy, it's painless, is just follow your grandma's advice and eat more vegetables.
Exactly.
No, I'm serious. That's cute, but it's also true.
No,
you're opposed to, $350.org, a great organization doing good work and work on the oil companies. Thank goodness someone's banging away at that also.
Yeah.
But the consumer today can say, you know what, I'll have a veggie burger, or I'll have this instead of that.
Yeah, and they're delicious too. They're delicious.
Again, we can do a forum on that, of course, but I just,
So one last question.
There's a little thing called cruelty too, but that's a whole nother talk. Yeah.
So what's the actual name of the second lawsuit?
The name of the suit.
Something versus something.
I'd have to go to my slide. Contact me. I'll tell you the name of it. I can go look it up. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
It's Advocates for the West is running the suit for them, Advocates for the West. And you could Google it, but you reach out to me, Jack at treespiritproject.com. That's for anybody. Treespiritproject.com is my website, Jack. And also jackg at idausa.org. Email me twice or once if you can remember either.
I'll put that into the chat box, and we are getting close to the time that we're going to wrap up. So if anyone has any burning question that wasn't answered, you can put it into the chat. We might be able to do another question before we close today.
Is there a paragraph or a sentence that was in the original NPS acquisition that states the ranches were supposed to be phased out? That is such a simple question and such an incredibly complex answer. So yeah, we think so. That's part of the suit, which is, they're violating the Organic Act, and which is the 1916, if I have my numbers right, Jim Coda, the lawyer, statute that says you must prioritize in all the national park units the natural resources. That's a priority. So therefore, in a lawsuit, if you can prove that the natural resources, the animals, the quality of the water, the fish in the water, not to mention the Tule Elk, are suffering because of the cattle operation, you're not prioritizing them, things must change. You're violating the Organic Act, which founded the park. That's a short answer, and Jim Coda could write a book about it and give you an answer, and it still doesn't get us where we need to go, which is winning a lawsuit, informing the public, doing more actions, raising more money for indefensive animals so we can all continue this work. And again, since we're coming close to being only 20 minutes over our hour, thank you everyone for coming today and caring. None of this means anything without the public weighing in. We still have most of a working democracy, sort of, kind of, and I expect we'll keep it. I see thumbs going up. We really can, and I'm an optimist by nature, thinking that if you focus on the positive, you can help create that. So this is a win. Tell folks to join a winning campaign, and this can grow to beyond even just the Tule Elk, and even just the cows out, and even just helping Point Reyes National Seashore in my backyard. I'm 15 miles from the park as I sit here, become a wild place again, as it was meant to be by its founders. But extend that growth of awareness of what our climate issues are to America. God knows we need it. Anyone else?
So well said, Jack. Thank you so much. We're thrilled at IDA to have you as our Tule Elk consultant, our expert who's out there doing mission and action events for the elk. And thanks to everyone here who has participated, on many levels, whether you have been out there at one of these actions delivering water to the elk, whether you have been reading about it in the IDA e-news or donated, or perhaps you've been reading about it in the papers because jackg has been out there getting the word out to the media. We want to thank all of you for your involvement in this, and that's what keeps it going, and that's really what's behind this huge success. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. It takes a herd.
Definitely. We are the herd. We are the herd of elktivists. So thank you all very much for taking the time today to join us for this town hall. It's been our pleasure and honor to have an opportunity to speak with all of you and hear your comments, and please keep them going. You can reach out to jackg at jackg@idausa.org, and we will continue to keep you posted via our e-news and other actions that we're doing. So thanks to everybody, and special thanks to jackg for guiding us through the latest on what's going on with the NPS, as we call them, and also with the elk themselves. Thanks to everyone for joining us. We hope you continue your elktivism, and we will keep you posted.
We will be in touch and asking for your public comments.
Yes, you will. If you
So give me your contact me. Let's talk.
Yes, and if you want to support the campaign, you're welcome to do that at idausa.org/elk. And you can also donate there as well. Thank you to everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.